This whole dive into copper bullets has been fascinating for me, and you guys should check it out. Go to barnesbullets.com and have a look at the website and check out these bullets. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I found with them. But what they talk about is, like since 1989, they've been engineering the most technologically advanced hunting bullets and ammunition on the planet. And the more I shoot these suckers, the more I tend to believe it. They're manufactured here in the USA. In fact, their facility is down by my dad's ranch in central Utah. And what I've found is they really do create a little bit better penetration. They expand on impact, so the blood trails are quite a bit larger, and they do a little bit more damage, putting that animal down a little, faster. It's a way. In fact, on their website it says produce massive wound channels even in dense, thick-skinned game, and that is true. I found that to be true for sure. Check them out, and check out the episode I did with Barnes. So it's 191 with Mitch Cookson, and he gets into great detail about how these bullets are designed and why they're better. Definitely worth some consideration. Go to barnesbullets.com, have a look for yourself, and make a decision. Let me know what you think. See ya. Back a couple months ago, I did an episode with Brandon Maddox, who is the founder and owner of Silencer Central. You should listen to that episode. It's episode 197. I love this company, I love this brand, and I love the American-made product that Silencer Central produces. I use the Banish 30 on my hunting rifle, and if you guys follow me on Instagram and you saw that video I put together, you'll see that it's not like what Hollywood portrays it as. It's not like it silences the rifle down into nothing, but it makes a huge difference. Like, my ears don't ring when I shoot. The animals don't know where the shot is coming from. It disorients the sound. And Silencer Central makes it super easy for you guys. Jump on to silencercentral.com and pick one out. You could ship your rifle to them. They'll thread your barrel. They'll ship it back. This is like a 10-day process, and the ATF process is shortened significantly. It's like down to 48 hours or less. It's the best time ever to get a silencer on your weapon, and you should check it out because it really is a game changer. SilencerCentral.com is where you could find them, or you can call 866-891-4494, and they're happy to answer questions. It's crazy. They actually have people that answer their phone. Again, guys, go to SilencerCentral.com. It's one of my favorite sponsors out there. These guys are just absolutely world-class with these world-class products, and I can't recommend putting a silencer on your hunting rifle enough. Save your ears, disorient the sound in case you need another shot. I mean, it's a game changer, folks. Check it out. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to make 2024 your best September elk season yet? If you answered yes, my friends, you are in the right place. From the Western Huntsman Podcast and brought to you by Phelps Game Calls, welcome to the School of September, the most comprehensive September elk hunting podcast on the planet. Listen in to some of the world's most prolific elk hunters joining us to talk about strategy, calling elk, spot and stock, and closing the deal on some of our wildest dreams. From the Broken Tine Studio to your knowledge toolbox, let's get one step closer to notching that tag. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. I almost forgot the name. Actually, I'm confusing it because this is a School of September. So welcome to the next installment of the School of September for 2024. And I think I've got a really good one for you guys this week. So we are just kind of continuing on with these Schools of September until we hit September. So, and by the way, guys, if you know anybody out there that is like good for school of, I'm trying to look for people that could do like a School of October for our rifle hunters out there. I don't want to leave you guys out for this season, but it's really hard finding somebody that wants to talk about rifle hunting in October. But if you guys know somebody, or that's you or whatever, hit me up, Jim@thewesternhuntsman.com, and I will check it out. So this School of September episode is brought to you by Eastman's Hunting Journals, and I am coming at you from the Broken Tine Studio right here in Northwest Montana, where summer cannot make up its mind. So this week, I've got my new buddy. He was actually introduced to me by somebody who's been on the show, Jaden Bells, a few times, and Jaden's a great guy. I always love getting him on, but he recommended I get a guy named Devan Reilly on. Devan is the host of the Blazing Trails podcast and the Top Dog Hunt podcast, which is for all us nutty coyote hunters out there. I'm going to have to check that one out. I haven't listened to that one yet. Devan he's a trad hunter. He writes for Eastman's Hunting Journals as well. In fact, I'll just let him give his background. But Devan, I appreciate you joining me, man. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Hey, thanks, Jim, for having me on. And I was going to tell you to keep going. It sounds like you're doing a better job. But yeah, a little bit about me. I grew up in Sheridan, Wyoming, there at the foot of the Bighorn Mountains, and grew up hunting with my dad. He was a professional hunting guide, and he's kind of laid off it a little bit now, but he's kind of known for hunting sheep. But I was in the mountains at 7 years old, horseback riding with him, and I remember one story. He sat me down on a log, and I could do a pretty good cow elk chirp with my voice. And he went off in the timber and was chasing a bull, and then he circled back an hour later and picked me up, and off we went. And remember sitting by a wallow and elk were screaming. And then it started getting dark and cold, and I was like, let's get out of here. So,
nice.
But yeah, just been hunting for quite a while, and then I made the transition from traditional archery in 2017. But I always dabbled with it. Like I picked up what was it? I shot a PSE Spider back in the day when I was 13. But I shot
remember those? Yeah.
Yeah, I shot at open sights and split fingers.
Wow.
And I ended up killing a black bear when I was 13, and that was my first bow kill. And I shot that for a long time, and then made a transition right at my senior year of high school to compound, and shot it for 4 or 5 years, and then around 2017, I wasn't really just picking up the bow as much as I should have to be ethical for animals. I just would pick it up and it'd be dead on at 30 yards, and nothing against compounds, but I wasn't doing the respect that it needed. And so I transitioned to the recurve, and man, I got my first kill in 2017 on a whitetail, and I've been hooked ever since. And
do you feel like with transitioning to a trad bow, because I'm in a transition, we were just talking before we hit record, I'm in like a transitional phase too, but is going to a trad bow, is it like just this for guys that like, I don't know if I'm totally going to just not explain this right, but so I told you I'm switching from, I've been shooting right-handed bow for like almost 20 years, and my ability and my confidence with a bow has never like peaked. Like with a rifle, I haven't missed an animal, and I'm not saying this in a braggadocious way, but with any rifle, and I don't care what it is, I don't miss, and I'm very proficient with it, and I'm very lethal with it. But I'm mostly a bow hunter, and I've never had that confidence. And so I've been just really diving into how, what I'm screwing up. I've taken courses. I've done all this stuff. And I think what it boils down to is I'm hopelessly left-eyed. I'm right-handed. So I'm switching to a left-handed bow, which I just got. And I shot it for the first time today, and it is freaking crazy going to a lefty, man. It is like totally different muscles. My shoulder hurts. Like, it's stupid. But I'm going to keep working on it. And I feel like the fact that I'm not forcing my left eye down into the peep sight is already making a difference in my accuracy. And so I that was a long way of me asking you, like, is that just for guys that just like the constant push and the constant struggle and the constant challenge of bow hunting that bow hunting is that like just a logical next step for guys like that? I mean, what do you think?
Man, it could go a whole bunch of different ways. Some guys just love shooting compounds, and they're just super passionate about it, and they love getting a new bow every year. And hey, that's awesome. Like, some guys just really dive down it, just like you're switching to left hand. And I think it's a muscle memory thing. You're going to get that muscle memory down, and you're going to be throwing them right into the vitals. But like for guys that say have a number of kills under their belt, and got good hunting spots and get into a pile of elk, and they're like, I know if I go into the spot, I'm going to kill an elk or a deer or whatever it is that they're after, and they want to change it up. A recurve or a longbow is definitely the next step. And what's funny is there's even a step beyond that.
What's what crossbow? No, I'm kidding.
No, no. The next step would be a self bow, and I've actually made one with one of my buddies up in Montana. His name's Garrett Saraday, and he's been around a guy named, you probably heard of Clay Hayes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know Clay.
And yeah, yeah, one alone. I can't remember what season. I think it's season 8.
Yeah,
But
I think it's 8.
yeah, so he went up there and Clay's got a bunch of books on making self bows, and so my buddy, he's made a number of self bows. So I went up there and made a self bow. It's 60 inches long, and it's I think it's around 60 pounds pull weight, and shoot cedar shafts and all that good stuff. And
Wow.
I got it where I can shoot it now, but I haven't put like snake skin backing on it yet, or really dialed it in. But it shoots an arrow.
That's
So
badass, man. That's cool. That's
yeah,
way cool.
it's definitely cool to see something come out of a single log of wood and turn it into a bow that would take down a buffalo.
So like legality wise, is there anything stopping you from being able to hunt with that?
No, you should be able to hunt with it. It's no different than a recurve or a longbow. As
Yeah.
long as I believe as long as it meets the weight requirements. And
Here's
so,
here's how dumb I am, dude. Like what's really the difference between a longbow and a recurve?
okay, so when you think about a longbow, you got the limbs, you got the riser, and then you got the string.
Uh-huh.
The easiest way to remember it is on longbows, the string doesn't touch the limb.
Oh, gotcha.
And so then on a recurve, they usually have that, it comes up, and then some bows will have a reflex deflex, and that's maybe a little bit above my pay grade. But anyway, that tip will really bend back towards the outer edge of the bow, and then you can see the string will ride down the limb for 4 or 5 inches, and then it comes off. And so, and I haven't shot much of a longbow. I know recurves are supposed to be a little bit smoother, a little bit faster. The longer the bow, just like any, is a little bit more forgiving.
Sure.
But yeah, so that's the difference between those.
Okay. Well, because I've always had like this inclination. My buddy Nate Davenport, he shoots with a trad bow, and he's a tattoo artist, man. He fixed up my tattoo for me, and so he's just a cool dude. But he killed just a freaking smoker of a bear with his trad bow a couple of years ago. In fact, he came up and brought the skull up, and we recorded a podcast after he did it. But so I've always wanted to, because I feel like it's just like it is tough to kill an elk with a compound. And I don't care what anybody says. It's quite an achievement to kill, a 700-800 pound animal with a compound bow. But going to a trad bow is like next level. Explain kind of what the challenges are. Obviously there's the obvious one of distance, but what else changes, like when the way you hunt or whatever, when you're in, say, September archery elk season?
Yeah, for sure. The biggest thing I noticed, because don't get me wrong, when you switch from a compound to a recurve, you're going to want to go back to that compound at some point. You're going to be 60 yards from an elk. You're going to be 50, and you have a perfect broadside shot, but you got to cut it down to 20 because you just started shooting it and you haven't practiced past 20.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, and you have no sights on a recurve, and you got, not very many checks. Like it's a very simplistic weapon, but it's also the most complicated, because you got to be the mitigator of all the inconsistencies. And so, yeah, when you're sitting there trying to get close to the elk, you got to make sure that your stocking's on point. You got to make sure that your clothing, make sure your accuracy's there. You got to also make sure that you're mentally there, because there's a lot of guys that are great, compound shooters, and I'm sure you've seen this. And there's a lot of guys that are great, target shooters with a recurve, but when they get in that red zone, it almost seems like they don't know what's going on. It's like a deer in the headlights,
Yeah.
And then they miss that opportunity. So it's knowing how to get into that zone and be able to kill that animal. And I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and you have a lot of great guests on that talk about, fighting animals and getting in close. But, a lot of these guys are shooting at 40 yards, and that's my limit. So, they're killing these animals before I even get started into my range.
Wow. Do you call a lot, or is it mostly like a spot and stock thing for you?
Man, I like to do a little bit of both, but it's kind of like a hybrid. I know you had Sam Davis on, and he talks about his hybrid system. And
Yeah.
I don't like to make a sound unless I absolutely have to. Like, I try to make sure that if there's a herd of them, and they're kind of having a rut fest, I like to get in there nice and tight and wait for a herd bull to make a mistake. I've done a thing that I can't remember what podcast I heard off of, but I had a bull one time, spot me. He was in the timber and he didn't know exactly what it was. So I just started cow talking at him. And I walked right up to him and I got to probably 30 yards, stepped around a tree with my recurve shot and shot right over his back. And he was broadside.
Oh,
And so my shooting was off and it was kind of a ballsy tactic, but I just try to, whatever it takes to kill him, that's what I'm going to do. Like if I've got to be patient, sit on a game trail, I'll do that every now and then, but man, I've also haven't killed a lot doing that because it seems like I'll never walk my way. So I
yeah,
always got to
yeah.
go to the default aggressive.
Yeah, I think that, one of the themes that I'm finding, I've been doing these School of September since 2020. One of the common themes that I keep getting is people need to like learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable, meaning like you know how you can get in like these comfort zones where it's like, okay, I'm gonna leave the truck at first light, I'm gonna let off a bugle in this drainage, and if I hear one, I'm gonna kind of try to work my way closer and watch the wind, and then when I feel like I'm closer, I'm gonna let out another bugle and see if I can get this bull to come in, and there's like, if that doesn't work, they're kind of out of ideas or they're out of options. And I'm saying this from somebody who's been like pigeonholed like this, where
Yeah.
I feel like I run out of ideas, I run out of options. And so that's actually where the School of September idea came from. Was I want to hear from people that are wildly successful at killing elk and try to formulate some kind of consistency that they're doing. And one of the main themes is stepping out of that comfort zone and doing, outside the box type kind of tactics and strategies, and being more aggressive than what people are comfortable with being. Like that move you just mentioned about, that bull that spotted you and you just cow called your way right up to it. I've done something similar, and sometimes it surprises me what elk don't see. It's like mind boggling. And so it surprises me what you can get away with. So, before we get too heavy into the elk tactics, I want to back up from. Is that okay? Unless you had
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Well, you bet. I mean, yeah, go for it.
So before we hit record, you talked about a book called "Winning in Mind" or "With Winning in Mind," and it's by a guy named Lanny Bassham.
Yeah, it's like Larry Brassham. Yeah, Larry Brassham. I struggle pronouncing the last name too. So
Yeah, I barely
but
pronounce my own, man. But I talk about that book and how it applies to trad bow hunting or any kind of hunting, I guess.
man, I picked that book up when I was rodeoing professionally, and had a guy tell me, he's like, "Man, this will help you more with the mental game than anything." And to kind of summarize the book for guys, it's not a very big book, but he talks about controlling your mind. And the guy was a target shooter for the Olympics, and he was like a oh man, he was Olympic gold medalist and world champion, this and that. But he talked about the three layers of your mind. You got your conscious mind, your self-conscious mind, your subconscious mind, and then you got your self-image, right? So
Uh-huh.
think about your conscious mind. Like right now, we're doing a podcast, and then my subconscious mind is like, I better know how to talk and know how to pronounce everything right. And then my self-image, I got to be confident and believe in myself.
Mm-hmm.
So if you relate that to hunting, a lot of guys, say they're practicing, they're they're at the range consciously there. And then they're working on their practice, working on the fundamentals. And I like the 7 P's of fundamentals. It's proper prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. So when
Yeah,
you
so
start,
it's funny hearing that, man. That like I was in the Marines, and there's the 7 P's of the Marine Corps: proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. So it's all the same.
yes,
Yeah.
it's all the same. So, um, but when you're at the range, you're working through your shooting process, and the more that you can make that, proper, making sure that your practice is perfect, at least as perfect as it can be. So then, when you get up into a hunting situation, you don't have to think about, oh, is my peep right, or is my grip right, or is my release ready to go? And you're already subconsciously trained enough that you just do it.
Yeah.
And the only thing you got to focus on is squeezing off your trigger or releasing that perfect arrow, and then believing in yourself. I feel like a lot of guys, that train their ass off, they're in great shape, they shoot their bow all the time, they know where animals are, and then they got all three of those, that triangle, that trinity, knowing how to get on animals and get them killed, and then they get within the red zone, and then they don't believe in themselves. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh man, like it's never like me. I never get into this close to animals. holy cow, what do I do next? Like he's within range. When do I draw? When do I?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I feel like a lot of guys could really learn from is getting in those reps in the red zone. And I know we talked earlier about, you know, like the coyote hunting I like to do because I love to hunt coyotes. Like that's my favorite hobby. And what's great about coyote hunting, you get to do it, 24/7, 365,
Yep.
at least in Wyoming. And so that's a lot of time in the red zone. And granted, it is with a rifle, but shooting a coyote, they're only 7 inches, from the top bottom of their brisket to the top of their back, 7 inches tall by, a foot long, and that's the vitals. So you better be shooting your gun pretty accurately, know how to control your heart rate and knowing when to move and really know how to play the wind. But
Oh yeah.
um, it's like relating that to, and let me know if you want to interject because I'm kind of rambling, but
No,
how it
you're good.
relates, okay, how it relates to the trad bow. I like to, like, when I'm at the range, I like to make sure that all my stuff's really dialed in. And I got 5 targets here in front of my house. And then I just go through, I know you've probably heard of Joel Turner's stuff.
Oh yeah.
He's got his big elaborate process, and I've just kind of dialed mine into where I like to hook, line, and sink it. So when I'm going through my process of shooting, I pull my bow back, I put the pointer finger, my index finger on the string in my corner of my mouth. My thumb will go behind my ear, and then my tip of my nose will touch my fletching. And that right there is my hook. So I know that I got my draw right, and I know that I'm going to be lined up and set up for a proper shot. And then I get my line. And so I'm sure, I don't know if you've heard about how traditional archers kind of aim. There's usually two schools of thought. Some will be instinctive. So, like when you're throwing a baseball, you don't really have a point of aim. You just kind of like, that feels good and you ought to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's guys that are gap shooters. So they'll use the tip of their arrow and then they'll know, hey, my point on is, say, 40 yards. So as I get closer to this animal, my point has to be lower depending on how my eye is in relation with the string and the tip of that arrow. And so I kind of have a little bit of a hybrid system with my gap. I don't use the tip of my arrow. I actually just put reference markers on my riser.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at a consistent measurement. So I know, hey, at 15 yards, it's that top hash. If it's at 20, I use that and I just use it like a grid system. So if a deer's at 20 yards, that's my horizontal. And then I look down my arrow and I just get it in line, and that's my vertical axis. And then I just hold on that spot and I use a clicker on my bow, and it's just a draw check. It just tells me that my draw is consistent every time. And some guys will use it as a psycho trigger. So when it clicks, they'll let go so they don't have target panic. That I use that, but I don't. I start getting clicker panic. So what I do is I just click. When I pull my bow back, it clicks. I know I'm at the same draw check. Get it lined up, and then just have a smooth release, and then that arrow goes where I want it most of the time, anyway. And it's got me quite a few bulls and a cow and a couple other things with it. And
Huh.
but yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a long-winded answer, but I do that for practice, and then to like take it to another level, I really like I'll do some kettlebell swings, do some burpees, something, and then shoot one arrow, and then go down, do another 10 kettlebell swings, shoot another arrow, just trying to practice like you play.
Yeah.
And that really helps out a lot because I just don't want to get in the mountains and have that 20-yard opportunity on a screaming bull and not feel like I'm ready for the shot. I'm definitely going to be ready.
I want to go through that for a minute because I love the concept of practice like you play or train or whatever. I remember practice like you train. There's another saying and I'm totally drawing a blank. It must be it's like only Tuesday and it's already been a long week, dude. I've been all over the place, so bear with
No
me.
worries.
Anyways, I want to talk about that. So you kind of have this regimen where you'll shoot an arrow, you'll do some burpees, you'll get up, shoot an arrow again, like with the heart rate pretty high, and like how do you have like your target set up? How like realistic wise? How how a lot of people they just have this block target in the backyard. It's like maybe they can get 30 yards or something, and it's the same straight shot with no obstructions, no nothing. How do you do it?
So I got, like, I think I said 4 or 5 different targets in my front yard. I'll have one at 17 yards, one at 21, one at 30, another at 35, and then one more at 40. Because I feel confident at 35, but I throw that 41 in there just in case there is some deal. I got to have a follow up shot somehow.
Yeah.
And so what I like to do is I like to make sure when I'm practicing, I practice with intention. So if I'm going out there just to work on my form, I set out with a goal for what I want to accomplish that day. Someday I'm just squirrel brained and I'm not hitting my clicker. I'm not, I'm just I'm getting too close to where I want to hit, and then I'll just fling the arrow, move the bow. So I'm like, all right, today I'm just going to focus on making just a perfect shot, one arrow, and then go grab it, walk back until I get my mind calm. And then other days it's like, hey, my goal today is I want to have a good 3-shot group. Like I feel like I'm on board. Everything's clicking. I want to see if I can make all 3 of these arrows touch where I can walk up to the target and pull all 3 of them out with one hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, some days it's like, you know what, we're doing like a hunting day. All right, I'm going to pretend like I'm rucking or packing or I'll even do it in the middle of my workout. Do a workout, and between each of my breaks and my sets or whatnot, I'll go over and shoot one arrow. And I also shoot with my broadheads. Like I don't shoot all my arrows with the broadheads, but I'll pick one arrow and I'll shoot it. And then that'll be my one arrow, go back, do my sets, come back, shoot that arrow again. So, because there's a lot of tuning stuff that goes into it with broadheads and arrows and all that good stuff. So I just want to make sure that I'm on point with all that stuff. And yeah, that's kind of how I go about it.
Yeah, I love that, man. I was telling you, I set up this little archery range in on the property here, and I have, I don't know, I have a buck deer, I have some weird looking hog, I have a bear and an elk. The cool one is, man, I should take a picture and post it, but I've got this raccoon that you strap to a tree. And so it looks like it's hugging the tree, and
oh, nice.
It's pretty cool. And then I've got a coyote target, and I've got that same elk target that you do. I just found it on your Instagram. But the way I set that elk target is so I could shoot it straight on, like I'm just at a range or whatever. And I've got that out to 50 yards, I think is the max on that, and then it gets real brushy. But I also have it the way it's oriented. I can shoot like this one shot, and it's a 38-yard shot, and I have it set so I have to shoot between these 2 trees. And the gap is like 10 inches between those trees, and who hasn't, had those who have called elk in, or just gotten close to elk one way or the other, know that elk don't come in like you're looking at them on a range or something with this nice wide open clear broadside shot. And so at this angle, I'm trying to make it as realistic as I can, where I'm shooting between the trees, and another one I've got to kind of shoot over some brush or between brush or whatever. And I'm just trying to make as much realism as I can. The only thing I wish, dude, is I wish I had more slope on my property so I can do like uphill, downhill shots. But I don't have that kind of slope, so I'm stuck practicing up in the mountains with that one. So, which is fine.
Yeah, and I got another one that I like to do too, that maybe you could add to your practice, is like go from your target and take 3 arrows, grab one, throw it, 5 yards, grab another one, throw it as far as you can, and then maybe walk to that second arrow, walk to it, and then throw it again, since you're shooting a compound.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't use your rangefinder.
That's a good idea.
Because how many times have you had a bull walk in and you don't have time to range?
Lots, man. I've sent a couple of arrows like over the back or under the belly a couple of times, and it was because of range.
Yeah, and so that's another thing that I like to do. Just be like, hey, I think that's around 12 yards. Shoot, and then check it with your rangefinder, just so you can do some learning on guessing ranges at the same time. So it's kind of a twofer. But yeah, that's a good other practice.
That's a great idea. That's the way I've done it in the past is I'll take my rangefinder out on like wherever I'm at, usually on my property here, and I'll look at a tree and I'll guess the range, and then I'll check my rangefinder and see how close I was. That really helps too. Just trying to come up, like identifying how far 20 yards is and I'm speaking to all the listeners out there, being able to identify yardage without a rangefinder is really a critical skill, and it's harder than you think. What do you think? That's a tough thing to kind of develop as a second nature type kind of thing to have in your mind, Devan, and I don't know, what do you think?
It gets even harder when you're in the timber.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll tell you that because there's sometimes I'm like, man, he looks like he's a mile away, and then you range and it's like, oh, 35, but he's through a pile of sticks. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
the rangefinder got through there. There's other times you're like, oh man, it looks like he's 25, but then you range and he's 18 and he got away or something. Something with the light and the trees and how the shadows all play. Like that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of good guys out there that, especially it seems like a lot of trad guys because they go to these competitions, and I go to quite a few archery shoots during the summer, and especially up in Montana. I love going to some up there,
Uh-huh.
and there's no rangefinders at the competition, and so
Yeah.
you got to guess the distance at these ranges, and that's another good way to hone that skill. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is definitely tricky, guessing range.
That's awesome, man. I love picking your brain, man. This is good stuff. I actually I'd love to have you on at some point because I want to talk about your rodeo, both your
Okay.
career and your rodeo podcast. But we'll leave that for another time because I like that topic. In fact, I haven't even been to a rodeo this year, man. The one
No.
No, like that's very rare for us. My family, we love going to rodeos, and I always wanted to be a cowboy. And I had horses and stuff, but anytime one got frisky, it just bucked me off. So I never tried anything other than I lasted like 2.2 seconds on a bull one time, and
Yeah.
it took a lot of Coors Light to get me even on that bull, man. Anyway, so we'll have that for another conversation one time. But
All right. Sounds good.
unless you were born yesterday, you're very well aware of the fact that a lot of companies spend a lot of money on marketing and advertising and just their overly proudness of, if that's a word, their name recognition. This is not the case with Hoffman boots, guys. Don't go drop $500 on a good pair of boots when you can go to hoffmanboots.com and check out the Hoffman Explorers. They start at $370. I could save you 10% off of that by using promo code Huntsman10. Guys, I've been traipsing through the mountains of the western United States for almost a decade in these boots. They're totally waterproof. There's no break-in period. They're every bit as good as those high-dollar boots out there that you see for a lot less. So don't waste your money on the other stuff. These boots have everything you need for a lot less, and I wouldn't steer you in the wrong direction. I wouldn't recommend them if I don't use them myself and don't absolutely love them. Check it out at hoffmanboots.com. Promo code is Huntsman10. I want to talk about like your overarching, and I ask this question. I always have a hard time asking this because that's a big word for me. Like your overarching strategy overall. Are you mainly a caller? Are you mainly a spot and stock guy? I know you made mention that you kind of have this hybrid approach to it, but so you don't touch the calls very much. So as this spot and stock guy, I like to kind of speak to the folks that this is maybe maybe their first or even their fifth year going out elk hunting, and they have yet to be successful, and they're just trying to get this mental toolbox full of tools built up in their mind so that they can maybe shorten that learning curve and notch a tag this year. So like your approach. Tell us a little bit about how you go out and let's say you're going to some new country and
Yeah.
you're gonna the hardest part, you can't kill an elk until you find elk. How do you find
Yeah.
elk?
Man, I like to get to high vantage points. That seems like the sound travels that way. It always seems to go up. I like to get to the top of ridges, especially if I can see some of them open side hill meadows, because elk are typically feeding all night, and then they might get a little bit of a snack early morning before they get water and go to bed. If I say they're not rutting super hard, like to try to pick them out there if they're still in their bachelor groups, try to see if I can spot them elk that way. And, I do call every now and then, but it's very selective. I like to do it just to maybe sort of locate if I haven't seen nothing. I'll let out, a couple location bugles, cover some country, try to get to another vantage. And that's, I mainly call if I haven't seen something,
Yeah.
because elk, we got the luxury of they like to talk. So why not take advantage of that if, say, you haven't found something? Um, but say I do have elk located, then I try to sneak in and let them do the talking. But you know, there's so much technology out there, and there's more guys better at it than I am, especially with, like, say, reading maps and having, figuring out, water, food, bedding, all that stuff from e-scouting. But I say, don't you drive all that way to go hunting. Put the boots on the ground. It's dark out. Get out of your truck, go walk.
Hmm.
My dad told me once when I was a kid, because we'd be riding horses in the dark or we'd be hiking, and I'd be like, hey, what about a bear? What about this? And he's like, well, you just got to change your mindset. If you start, your a guy's mind will start playing more tricks on him than what's actually out there. And if you have the mindset that if something does attack you, that thing's going to have a hell of a fight, and you're not going to give up, that's kind of the mindset. You don't want to be like, I'm just going to lay down there and die. You know what I
Yeah, oh,
mean? It's,
yeah. Yeah.
the optimist versus the pessimist. But no, I think, getting up early and just optimizing your time. So I don't know. I like to get up early. I like to get to advantage. If I hear something, move towards it, get closer, make sure it's not a person. If it's an elk, great. Now you got them located. If not, say you didn't hear anything that morning, it's all right to do some cold calling, get and start putting some boots on the ground and try to go to have your spots figured out and that what you'd like to see. And, hopefully you're in good enough shape to get to all them spots before your time runs out.
When you say cold calling, are you talking about just a quick locator bugle? Are you doing any cow calling, anything like that?
Yeah, I think, if you're sitting there up on a ridge and you want to cover some country, I think a bull call is going to reach a little bit farther than just a light cow call.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just trying to locate elk, I feel like that's good. But if you haven't seen any elk, but you're in the timber and you can smell elk. You know what I mean? That's something that a lot of guys talk about their sight and hearing, but no one really talks about the smell. You might not see any elk, you might not hear any elk, but you sure smell them.
Oh, yeah.
And so they might be somewhere else, but they come in there for the bedding, or they might come down there in the evening. But if you can smell them, heck, you're not going to be out for, say eating your lunch and then, doing some cow talk and do maybe a light bugle, do some cow talk, and have your buddy cow talk, and then just see if maybe something comes in. Elk are so dang curious,
Yep.
I had a like, for example, a buddy of mine in 2022, I just bought my house and I was like, hey, I got a day to hunt, and guys are going to probably hate me for telling this story. But anyway, I had a day to hunt. It was September 17th. And I was like, I don't care. I just want to go hunting. And so we went out and we had to hike into this spot, and we did some location bugles, didn't see nothing. My buddy knew where some water was. So we found this water, and we're sitting there glassing down into this pocket and saw a spike. And then, 15 minutes later, saw a little raghorn. He's like, what do you think? I'm like, man, I don't know how much hunting I'm going to get done this year. Let's do it. Like, let's drop in there. He's like, you shoot that spike? I'm like, heck yeah, man, I'm shooting a recurve. I'm not too picky. So we get down there and we get to where we think we're about 100 yards away, and it's the middle of September, but nothing's talking. And so I rip out just a very faint bugle, and my buddy's hanging back about 60 yards. And I just wait. I just rip off one bugle, let him know we're there. And then he slowly, after maybe 5-10 minutes, starts cow talking. Well, about 15 minutes later, here comes that spike. Here he comes. And he doesn't make a sound. He just kind of coming in, looking. And he knows there's supposed to be elk there. So he's a little cautious, but he's still curious.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's coming. He gets to 40 yards. He gets to 35, gets to 30, and I'm tucked in between these two cedar trees, and I already got an arrow nocked. I'm on my knees. I'm just waiting, and I'm looking through my quiver at him through my arrows, and I'm like, all right, he's got to be about 28, and he's looking right at me. And finally, my buddy rips off a cow, he's cow talking, and that bull turns his head, and then the luxury of a recurve is I don't have that big cam over.
Mm-hmm.
So I just start creeping my bow back, and I get to full draw. He stops to look one more time, and I let that arrow go at 28 yards and smoke him. And he ended up turning and running 150 yards and piled into the cedars.
Nice.
Anyway, so we went out, and I think a total time of hunting was maybe 4 hours.
Wow.
Getting a bull with my recurve, and he was a decent spike. I mean, he was over a foot tall on each side with his horns, but it was cool. That was just a 1-day deal, but.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, man. If you've only got, I mean, shoot, even if I have all month, man, I'd shoot a spike. I don't care. It was the craziest thing. What was that?
You can't kill him on the couch.
Yeah, exactly. You can't kill him on the couch. So, yeah, a couple of years ago, I took my daughters out and we're kind of going down this draw, and where we hunt, man, you can't just set up and watch the other side, or get into some high elevation and see a bunch. It's so thick and brushy, there it's just that glassing isn't really an option here. And other than some of the timber clear cuts where they've been logging and whatnot, but we're going down, and we actually can see the other side a little bit. There's like this opening in this trail, and it's clearly an elk trail. And as we're kind of walking down, this really nice, heavy 5-point bull all of a sudden appears on that trail and just keeps walking up, going the opposite direction from us. And like a highway, a spike was walking down it, and they just kind of passed each other, didn't even acknowledge each other. And it's like the 20th of September. So I found that a little odd anyway, but I start cow calling, and that freaking spike, man, he rips off the nastiest bugle, one of the nastiest bugles I've ever heard. Like, you would have never known he was a spike.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy. I wish I would have had it on film, because I mean, it even kind of had that, how big bulls get that real growly wah at the bottom of the bugle. He almost had that, like it was just scratchy enough to kind of fool you, and I told the girls, I'm like, I am shooting that spike if he comes in, and he didn't. We got busted by wind. He busted us when he was, I don't know, probably 60 yards right at the bottom of this draw coming at us. But it was a damnedest thing, man. I've never seen a spike bugle, especially like that. He just sounded like this big raunchy bull. So that was, isn't that crazy? Like the things you learn just from being out there. Before that, if somebody would have told me that, a spike can bugle and sound just as mean as nasty as a big, 5 or 6 point bull, I wouldn't have believed you. And obviously it's not as deep and as heavy sounding, but it was still, if that would have been in heavy timber, I would have thought it was a big mature bull. And so anyway, side story.
Well,
on spikes.
Have you seen some cows bugle?
Yeah, man, I did. In the springtime, I saw a cow bugle one time on my old property.
Yeah, it's, they're just vocal animals, and it's one of the things that we love about them.
Well, and I've told this story too, but down in Post Falls, Idaho, which is a couple hours from me, there's this elk farm, and there are these like 350, 400 class bulls hanging out on it, and you could pull up on the side of the road and feed them carrots in this one area. And I pulled up there, and I had carrots, and I had my daughters with me again. So I always learn stuff when the girls are with me, because elk seem to do weird things. But this big, like, no exaggeration, but not impressive, it's a domestic bull, 380 class probably, just a monster, man, like drop tines and everything, starts mewing like a cow. He's going meow, real quiet, like whispering at us because he wants a carrot. And every time we pulled a carrot out, he'd meow. And it was, again, if I wouldn't have seen it, I wouldn't have believed it. But yeah, they mew like cows. So crazy sounds.
Yeah, super vocal, man. And man, one thing I don't know, like on the topic, like calling, like when you get in there and, you just got, it seems like as elk hunters, you always got so much stuff on you. And, and like I carry a bugle tube and do some of that stuff. I'm okay with the diaphragm, but I've also, like, when you're trying to get in close, so you don't have time to put the stuff where it needs to be. It's like I learned how to cow talk and how to bugle with my whistle, and that's saved me. It's not perfect, but I don't know if you want to hear it, but that's how I kind of go in there. And
let me hear your whistle bugle. I love that.
Yeah, the bugle.
Either one, whichever. That's pretty impressive, man.
Like, it's not perfect, but I mean, like, an elk don't know,
no.
But like cow talking just. So I do that. And another thing that, like, along with like the whistling tactic, is something that I do that's probably out of the norm. And one thing, like, I learned this last year, actually, I was wearing, I always talk about guys carrying decoys. Do you carry a decoy?
No, man. We talked about that a couple episodes ago, though.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and a lot of people wrote in about it. What do you say about it?
Man, I actually became the decoy last year.
Really?
So, Yeah, so here this like I was wearing Stone Glaciers like De Havilland Light. They're like that muskeg brown color.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had their like merino wool. It's like a coyote tan, that middle layer hoodie. I can't remember for the life of me what it's called.
Yeah, I don't know
Uh,
either.
but it's the same color as an elk, and I didn't even plan it. Like I just my legs were brown and my upper body was tan. And I ended up finding this little herd of elk in the timber, and I'm just kind of like stalking in there, going super slow, trying to get as close as I can, and take a step, look. Well, anyway, I looked the wrong way, took a step, and I look over, and there's a bull at 40 yards, and he sees me, and I'm like, shit, like they're just gonna bolt.
Uh-huh.
Well, they looked at me for I don't know 2-3 minutes, started going back, milling around, doing what elk do, start eating. One bull laid down, another bull left, and the one bull that laid down wasn't one I was really wanting to chase. So I just kind of circled around, got the wind right, and got out of there. And then it happened to me another couple times on that hunting trip. And what I thought was that bull saw me, but he saw the same color as an elk through the tree limbs. And he just thought it was another elk coming because the wind was good. And so they're like, oh, it's just another elk, and went back to doing their stuff. But if, say, for example, like predators, they're always moving slow and they have a different camo that tries to blend them in. So if you're wearing your camouflage, they elk saw that movement, and the next thing that movement's disappeared. Elk are like, that's fishy.
Yeah.
But if they can still see that same color, and it actually, I think that setup I did for my clothes actually saved me on my bull last year, because what happened, I was coming just I can't remember how them guys talk. It was just slow playing it through the trees.
Uh-huh.
And I looked down, and probably 60 yards away, there's an open park, and there's a bull feeding on the edge of it. But before the park and the timber, there's a rolling hill, and leading down to the park is a game trail. I'm like, perfect. The wind's good. His head's down. He's behind that little rise right there in the timber. I was like, this is going to happen now. So I took my backpack off, knocked an arrow, and I just worked down that game trail because it was super quiet. I was bent over like a Native American, like you see in the paintings, just hustling, just scurrying down this path. Anyway, and I had the rangefinder in my right hand, and I had my bow and arrow nocked in my left. And I just periodically kept ranging. I'm like, all right, he's at, 55, right? He's at 50. And then the trail started petering out at around 30 yards. And so now there's sticks and grass and stuff that's going to catch my boots. So what I do is I just lined up 4 trees. And as I'm going, I always kept the 4 trees in between me so that they'd be blocking his eyesight. And as they go up the 30-yard mark, now the hill's starting to roll over, and I can start seeing more of the meadow below me. And so now, like, I remember I was reached behind the tree, and I ranged one more time, and on his butt, and it was like 25 yards. And so I'm like, all right, I'm good. Put the rangefinder away, get my tab underneath my arrow, and here we go. And he stepped out, and I went, and as he's stepping out, he had like that sixth sense. He kind of knew something was up. Even I don't know if the wind was starting to kind of swirl or something, but he knew something was up. So he was kind of doing that little bit nervous walk going forward. And I drew, and I could have a clear shot of his vitals, but my hand slipped off the riser a little bit. And so I'm like, oh no. Anyway, I gripped. He looked at me. I drew again, shot, and smoked him. He ran probably 120 yards back into the opposite timberline. And I think the only thing that saved me, if you just saw a camouflage figure there, I feel like he would have been long gone. What the heck is this, Sasquatch?
Yeah.
And, he saw the same colors as an elk, so he hesitated. He had to get that double look.
Yeah.
And that's at least my theory. I mean, maybe some guys will try and be like, you're full of shit, but it was.
I think I think there's something to that. And I think it depends on the animal, man. Like, I think a good camo pattern is really good for bear hunting and coyote hunting.
100%.
I mean, for me, coyote hunting, man, me and you should get together, man. I love coyote hunting. That's what I did that's how I made money in high school, because they paid a $50 bounty on coyotes, and so, yeah, man. And so, I mean, one of the ways, it wasn't the only way, but it was my favorite way. So I talk about it all the time. But anyway, but like with elk and even deer, I think back way before I was ever involved in like the hunting, industry or whatever. I don't even know if I hate to even like consider myself in the hunting industry, but the reality is I am,
Yep.
and so now I've got access to all this high end camo and stuff that I like. I enjoy it. I like the technical aspect of a lot of this gear that comes out that keeps me drier and keeps me cooler or warmer or whatever the case is. So all that disclaimer out of the way. Long before that, man, I was killing animals literally in my jeans and a flannel shirt, just like that meme that talks about Fred Bear saying that,
Yeah.
That's how we did it, and blazing orange vests in whatever state that required them where I was hunting. And so I do like the camo for some things, and I'll probably still wear camo this season because I've dropped a fortune on gear already, and so my wife's getting a little antsy with me. But I was gonna switch to solids for this September.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the company I was looking at. The dude that was on my show brought up the name of this company that does these solid, basically hunting technical gear. But anyway, a lot of them have it.
Yeah, it's like Stone Glacier. Or is it another one? Like, what was it?
Do they have them?
Yeah. Stone Glacier has a lot of
I think it was like Origin something or
Origin.
Yeah, I'm totally drawn a blank. If I listen to this one back, I'm gonna like kick myself because I know
that's good. Well, and like like you're asking about stuff to help your listeners out for like they're just getting into it, right? Well, you think about it, if you can eat good, sleep good, and stay dry, you're going to be able to hunt hard.
Yeah.
And that's the main goal. So, making sure you got the best meals you can have, make sure you got a good sleeping system, make sure you got good rain gear and clothes. And then you get all that dialed, you're good to go. All you got to do is hunt.
What do you do, man? Are you like a backcountry backpacker, or do you hunt from like a base camp? Or tell me a little bit about your process.
Yeah, Dad and I, we've always, from when I told you we were a little kid, I would ride in there and we'd ride in horseback and we'd set up a camp and we'd do it that way. And then as time evolved, my dad would be going on sheep hunts, and so I couldn't go with him on those sheep hunts all the time. I've been with him a couple times, and then I just had to kind of pivot, and so I would do the bivvy thing. I'd just hunt with my, all my gear on my back, and then I'd get an elk and find water and just set up my little camp there and hunt for a while. And then if elk moved on, I just load back into it and off I go to find some more. And so that's why I kind of just do that. And sometimes I've even done it where I park at a little trailhead and walk 2 or 3 miles into a spot that I think has deer, and then hike back out if I don't see nothing, and then drive to another spot and just keep checking spots. Yeah. And so I've kind of done a little bit of all the different ways, but riding in, I've always really idolized the cowboy and the mountain man. So
yeah, man, me too.
Riding in horseback, man, Jeremiah Johnson's my favorite movie. So riding in horseback, it takes me back in time. So the more I can do that, the better. I guess that's the way I prefer to do it, but time doesn't always allow, so I'm not scared to walk either.
Well, I want to talk about the horses for just a sec, if that's okay.
Yeah, you bet.
I used to have horses, and
yeah,
I don't know, man. I think that in order to keep and have horses, you have to be really passionate about being a horseman. And I loved the horses as an animal, and almost like I love you love your dog. I loved my horse the same way. His name was Bad Whiskey, and he was a great quarter horse, 15 hands or so, and just did great in the backcountry and whatnot. But the problem was, man, I had a hard time justifying owning a horse financially and everything else, and it was constantly needing something, and I didn't have anybody to ride with either, and so I just kind of lost interest. Now my daughter is driving me crazy, wanting me to get her a horse, and I'm refusing because I like to travel too much, and anyway. Yeah. But my buddy Logan Erdman down in Wyoming there, he just got some horses, and he's getting into that, and for those out there that do like to hunt horseback or are planning to hunt horseback, give us like what you think is a good, like, strategic wise, strategically, if you're going into elk country on horseback, what do? Are you going in there, setting a camp, leaving the horses, and hiking from there, or are you literally hunting on horseback?
You can do both those different things that you stated there. You can ride in, set a camp, hopefully it has enough grass and food so that you don't have to, pack in horse cubes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But like you listed, horses comes with a whole nother set of problems. You get in there and you got to make sure that you're there every evening, making sure that if you have them on a picket line so that they can eat, make sure that they can get to water every day so they don't colic. If they throw a shoe, you got to patch the shoe. But no, you can get up there and leave them at camp and then go hunt for the day, come back, make sure that they're fed and watered, and then go to sleep, wake up, feed and water them again, go off for the day again. And that's one strategy. If you got a lot of country, and you know that you're not seeing anything within that 2 to 3 mile range or 2 mile range around your hunting camp, it's like, well, let's ride up and let's go check this other basin or let's check out this other drainage. Get on there and go for a ride and tie them up in the timber and then go off hunting, get in the elk, get one down, go back, grab the horses, load them up. And the beauty of it, 2 horses will pack out a whole elk, and it sure does save on your back.
Oh man, the only time I've ever considered getting horses again is when I'm packing out an elk.
Yep. And like my dad always told me, because my dad has, quite a few horses and he highly recommends mules. And I would too. I got a little place here. I'm just financially, I'm not ready for horses either. So that's why I'm mainly hunting. I actually have my old rodeo car, so I throw all my animals in the trunk. But I'm going down a rabbit hole. But with the horses, my dad's always like, "This is why we feed you all summer, so that we can work you out in the fall, and then we can feed you all winter back to the next fall." So they get a 9 month break, and then they get just work for 3 months. So they have a pretty good life.
Yeah, it's not terrible, man. It's really not terrible. Huh. I don't know. I love the concept. I'm like you, man. I have like this nostalgic love for the cowboy lifestyle. I love, some of my favorite books are like Lonesome Dove and things like that just really bring out that Western life, that cowboy life, and living off a horseback. And I've shot coyotes off a saddle. And man, with a good old fashioned cowboy gun, man, that Model 94 lever action 30-30 open sights.
No kidding.
Yeah, man. I flat out thought I was John Wayne one time because I did that. But and so I love that. I love that style. It's really difficult. Again, going back to kind of regionally where I live. It's great horseback riding country if there's trails, but you can't go off trail here. Like when I'd ride in Utah, for example, you can just go anywhere. You can go bushwhacking anywhere on a horse down there. Not anywhere, but you get the drift. Here you can't do that, man. It's too thick. It's too brushy. It's just, there's a lot of unforeseens. I wouldn't do that here. So I just hard time justifying.
Yeah, it's and I've ridden horses over Cody, Wyoming, going on them sheep hunts, and them horses are pretty impressive, man. Like, they do have their limit, but they definitely are their weight in gold. Like, and I know, like, with your podcast, like, not everyone can have horses, even though they'd like to, and I know there's some guys that all they can do is hike, and they're like, the dang horseback rider's going back in there, and both people kill elk. There's guys on horses I know that, say aren't very successful, but then there's guys on foot that are just straight up killers. So
absolutely.
And so you just kind of got to figure out what works best for you. And if you got the advantage of horses, great. And just knowing how to use it to their advantage. Like, for example, like, you're talking about getting through some really brushy country. You got time for a quick sheep story?
Yeah, man, for sure.
Yes. So I was going along with my dad on this sheep hunt, and I was just going to be the wrangler, taking care of horses, chopping firewood, taking care of camp, cooking, all that good stuff. And we got through the opener before the sheep hunt started, and we're up glass and had camp set up. But we went up glassing that evening, and we spotted this just boomer of a ram. And Dad's like, we got to go after that sucker, and his hunter was all game for it. So the next morning, I made a game plan to go after this ram. And Dad's like, hey, if we get this ram down, I'll let you know by like we used to do the mirror image effect. You ever hear of that?
Uh-uh.
And so, because some places you can't use radios and all that good stuff. So what he would do is if I'm
Oh
spotting
yeah.
for my dad, if I can see like I'm him, like I'm dad, and then I'd put like an orange bag out representing where the rams are, where the elk are in relation to him. So when he looked back with his glass, if I'm holding the bag high right, he knows that he's got to go high right to get to the elk. So then
Mm-hmm.
he's anyway. So I was doing that for dad on these rams, and he ended up getting in there and getting the hunter his ram. But that previous night, he's like, "Hey, if we get this ram down, there's this trail that I've never seen it." He's like, "There's this trail that goes out here." Drops it on zigzags. He's like, it's been a couple years since I've been out, so it might be wind blown down, all that stuff, but you can come down and hit the creek bottom and you can follow this drainage up and you should meet where if we get the ram over where I think we're going to get the ram. I'm like, okay, this sounds like it's going to be good luck.
Mm-hmm.
He goes over there, ends up killing this ram just like you said. And so I'm like, he's too far away, so he had to camp out that night, so he needed me to bring the horses in the next morning. Anyway, I get these horses loaded up at 5 a.m. and I hit this trail where he said, and the trail isn't there. Like it was all blow down, brushy, rocks everywhere. And I led 2 horses and 2 mules through that. It took me probably an hour, but I got them through all that blow down and off to the other side. And just as dad was packing the ram up out of this pocket they shot it in, I was meeting him at the top of the divide to pick him up.
Nice.
And it just all worked out. But them horses, like there'll be some sketchy stuff. Like you get in the trees and you get nervous and you're like, oh my gosh, why did I even do this? Why I'm in here? And then you start getting speeding up. And that's
Mm-hmm.
a time that you need to just slow down. Because I feel like a lot of guys get into them hunting situations and they start freaking out, figuring out that they're getting lost or they don't know what to do. And they just start going faster, which is the wrong thing. They should be slowing down, take a breath, get their bearings. You know, things in nature don't go at fast pace; they go at their own pace, and we got to go at that pace as well.
Yeah, the thing that would always make me nervous is when it would start raining and those those beat down trails, those dirt trails, they'd get real slick for the horse.
Yeah,
And my horse was a bit clumsy, man. Like he'd always slide and he'd lose his footing and start kind of hauling ass a little bit too much on a slippery trail and so if it was dry he was sure footed as all get out, but yeah, he just, I don't know, that always made me nervous. But I think there's room. Like you were saying earlier, you got to kind of adjust to the situation. There's room. I've had a few guys, kind of speed past me after like I'm parked at a trailhead or something on horseback. This was a while ago, but I just adjusted where I didn't go as far because the horses are going, they're going in there. And so if you've got guys on horses, just stop and wait, let them get ahead of you. Don't stress it, man, because they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to chase elk that are further back towards the road towards you, or they're going to kill it. And so there's no reason to stress about it. Like there's other elk there. And in fact, and I've been preaching this for a while, most of my elk encounters the last few years have been actually closer to the road than further from the road because I think this tendency for folks to want to get really far back has changed a lot of the movement on some of these elk. And this is, again, this is going to be totally regionally dependent.
right.
But anyway, yeah, I'd love to do it again. Get some horses and just not even just for hunting, man. I love riding horses. But I don't know.
It's no different than like you said these guys getting into backpack hunting. It's like, hey, if you're not comfortable, just go out for a day hike, come back. Hey, the next weekend, go out for an overnight trip, come back, and then maybe do it 2 nights, and then same thing with horses. Go out for a long day ride, come home. Then once you get comfortable with that, go set up a tent, all that stuff, learn how to pack. Running the lash rope and manis and all that good stuff, and.
Mm-hmm.
Get back in there overnight for a night, then come out and then just slowly build up that tolerance and figuring out what you can do with them horses, and they'll blow your mind what you can do on the back of them things.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, can I throw like so when I first started School of September, I would do this thing where it was like lightning round questions towards the end, and apparently that was really popular. I kind of got away from doing that, but I've had people asking if I do that again. Do you care if I throw some elk hunting lightning round questions your way?
Sure, bring them on.
All right, I got to track them down. So, this question, he's asking, how do you react when you have like a couple of different game plans for the day, and you're going out and you're finding that there's a lot more hunters in the area than you were expecting? What do you do at that point? Do you keep looking for new country, or just put your head down and continue to hunt in that area? I hope I'm reading that right.
Yeah. For me, it would depend on how much time I got. If I got just a day, I'm probably going to sit there and try to outglass those guys and just try to, if I know it's a producing area. If I do have time on my side, I'm going to go to either hike further or go to a whole different deal and try to find something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I'd probably answer that quick one.
Yeah. No, I don't think I'd change that at all. The one thing I would throw in there, and Devan, you'd probably agree with this, is if you're hunting areas where there's trailheads and you get to a specific trailhead and that was like your main, plan A or whatever, and there's a bunch of trucks there, don't frustrate yourself by going in there. Like, go somewhere else. And I always go out with multiple game plans. There's never just plan A and B. It's A through C, D, E, F, G sometimes. And I try to keep those all within it's what's in the top of my head every time I do this is I have like this 50-mile radius where I have like 6, 7, 8 different spots that I can go. So if there's trucks at trailheads or lots of people in there, or somebody parked in a spot you were thinking of going in, I just don't frustrate myself by going in there, because inevitably you're going to run into them and you're going to feel like they messed up your hunt, even whether they did or not, is irrelevant, because you're going to be frustrated with it. I got another, I think I've said this too in the past, Devan. I want to know what you think. I don't hunt trailheads. I don't go to trailheads. I find hidden drainages, hidden areas, or drainages that are blocked by a steep hill or something, and I will park in the most random spot. There's typically not even barely a parking area. It's just the side of a dirt road. I'll pull the pickup over. I'll get it off the road as much as I can. I'll usually pop my mirror in, and I will blaze. I'm still in your line here, Devan. I will blaze my own trail, and I'll go bushwhacking up somewhere that I know that I can access a drainage that is nowhere near some main trailhead. And that has served me very, very well. What say you?
Yeah. There's some of them times where you got them trailheads that's the only way to get in. You know what I mean? Like that's the main access to the wilderness or what have you. But then you got those spots that, there's a lot of, barriers to entry to get in there. And it's like, hey, like if I go park over here, there's no people, but also it cuts off 2 miles off my trip back in there. You know what I mean? Like there's different spots a guy can go. And then like, I want to kind of circle back to the point you talked about, if there's people there, it just changes your hunting strategy a little bit too. Like say you do run in a bunch of people and you see a deer and they're, going after that deer. It's like, hey, if they get it, congratulations. If they don't, where's that deer going to want to be? And then I'll start heading that way. So it's like, I'm not molesting their hunt, but I'm playing off of their deal. Like, just like in football game, one guy's trying to make this play. Okay, well, if this guy misses a tackle, where's that quarterback going to be? I'm going to be right there to tackle him there in case that guy misses. So,
okay, that's a great point. Oh, did I cut you off there?
No, you're good.
I want to ask you something, but not deer related, elk related. If you are, let's say you're overlooking a drainage or whatever, you've got some high ground. You see some hunters come in and they spook a bull. The bull and the other elk, they kind of go boogieing off. Usually they take the path of least resistance over the next mountain ridge or whatever.
Yep.
So the question at that point is, based on your instinct and your experience, we've all, well, I don't know if we've all done this, but like what I've noticed with mule deer is if you bump a mule deer is going to make like this giant circle and just kind of end up back in that same general vicinity uh, usually the next day or even sometimes within a few hours. And if it's a young buck, it's like 15 minutes. He's going to make a loop and come back. you know.
Yep.
But with elk, I haven't like really developed an opinion or an instinct as to where they're trucking off to. I think it's just more or less, they're boogieing until they feel comfortable again. If you see that, okay, let's say the elk is like 500 yards across on the other side of the ridge or whatever, and you see the hunters are kind of above heading down towards that bull. I think I said buck earlier. I meant bull. And you notice that bull notices them, and he turns and darts, over the ridge down into the next drainage or whatever. What would your game plan be on that bull at that point? Do you have an instinct on that?
Yeah, it's kind of tough without physically being there.
I know it's such a tough question.
it is a tough question, but typically, say that elk was coming from the bottom going up towards the hunters. That bull's going to go back the way he came because he knows that safety's that way. Just like say you shoot an elk, he's going to go back the way he came every time. So, and just trying to play that wind to get back down below him and to cut him off that way. And like elk, depending if they're just kind of by themselves, they can go quite a ways. But then if there's also other elk around, those other elk didn't see him get spooked, and he just comes running by, he might take them a little ways, but they're going to stay within that that region. I don't think they're just going to go completely out of the country. Like sometimes you'll bump them in the timber, and they might go 400 yards, into another cut, and they just group back up and do their little head count, and they're good to go back to grab assing. But sometimes they catch your wind just right and situations right, they might go a mile. So it's very situational, and I'm sure guys are tired of hearing that, but it's definitely, without being there looking at it, it's like, I think as humans, we like to keep it like chess and like really simplify it, where it's actually checkers. Sorry, it's like we're playing checkers, but actually we're playing chess.
Yeah, super complicated.
There's a lot more variables than checkers.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And that's one of the things that gets frustrating with not frustrating, but it's like, oh man, how many times am I going to ask the same kind of question? But it's always a different conversation, and the question leads to different things, and just like makes light bulbs go off every time. I'm of the opinion, like if the elks smell you, I feel like they're a couple of zip codes away, but if you just kind of bump them, man, I flung an arrow one time at geez, man, I can't talk tonight. I flung an arrow at an elk one time, and he like saw me shoot at him. Arrow hits this little limb, deflects right over his back by a couple of inches. This sucker ran 30 yards away over into some shady timber and just stood there and let me walk back up to him. So, and then there's been other times where the elk barely catch a glimpse of me, and they're like, I never see him again, So I think I couldn't agree more. There's just not like a black or white answer for that kind of question. All right, next question is rain and weather. This guy's asking, like, if you're out there, the elk are super quiet, and I know you're not a big time caller, Devan, but I'd still like to get your take on this. He can't get responses. He's doing locator calls and cow calling, and then I'm totally reading this wrong, dude. I hate to like fess up, but I might need reader glasses. I can't believe I'm getting this old. I'm only 43, dude.
That's all right. What do they say? It's like the first level of acceptance is admitting it.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're on the right track.
To recovery is admitting it. I might be able to read these questions, but I'm fighting it, man. I'm really fighting it.
No, you're doing good, man.
Bright sunny day, elk are not talking, and then all of a sudden a thunderstorm comes in. What do you think that does to elk behavior? That's essentially his question.
Man, it just seems like when the weather's bad, like rainy, drizzly, cloud cover, misting, anywhere from probably like 40 degrees to 60 degrees right there, where it's really cool in the shade, and they love that rainy weather. I think it's something like, and for me coming from a rodeo background, it always seemed like when a storm front came in, them animals just something with that electricity in the air, it just fired them up. And
Yeah.
I feel like it does the same thing for elk. Like, they exert a lot of energy, run around fighting, doing the other thing. Like they got a lot of energy they're burning off. And I bet you that cool temperature just feels good. It'd be no different than go do a hard workout and then you get to sit into a nice, cool shower, not just a freezing one, but just a nice cool shower to relax. You're like, oh, this is nice. You get out all refreshed and you're ready to go again. So
Totally.
I feel like that weather just fires them up. It seems like when it gets really hot, they don't want to do nothing but sit in the shade. And then, if they do have a hot cow, they'll definitely be rutting, but they're also going to be breathing really hard and it'll definitely change, how they bed and all that different stuff. They'll be more around water too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. I couldn't agree more. Okay. I'll throw one more at you here, man. I know I've kept you a while.
No, you're good.
Okay. So guy says, 4 days into a hunt last year, I hadn't heard an elk. I hadn't seen an elk. I hadn't seen any elk sign. And I got really demotivated. How do you stay motivated when you have multiple days in a row of no action? What do you say, Devan?
Man, I always, I don't know how this is going to come across, but like when I'm driving around at work and stuff, I always think, hey, that elk is that I'm gonna kill an elk this year and he's up on the mountain chewing his cud right now. Like I have that level of confidence in my mind. And even if it's fake confidence, you fake it till you make it, and you can't kill elk if you're not in elk country or if you're on the couch. So it's like, all right, he's not seen elk sign, he hasn't heard nothing, smelled nothing, anything. It's like, all right, at that time it's like back out, get a different game plan, go into your plan B or plan C spot. Just it'd be like you trying to find a corner in a circular room. You're not going to find it. So you haven't seen the sign. I'd go change locations. Throw on some kick-ass music if you like Motley Crue. Listen to some good music. Get a good drink. Drive to your next spot or hike to it. And I don't know. Persistence is deadly. I know a lot of guys say that, but for me, I don't want to come off the mountain with any regret. If I come off and I put everything I had into my hunt and I came down to the last hour and now it's dark, it's like, hey, I can't hold my head low. I put everything I had into it and I should be very proud of myself because most people would have quit at that time.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, it comes down to just like we were talking about earlier, that, you're consciously there, you've done the preparation, you're ready to go. What's your self-image like? Do you believe in yourself? When you start, like, you're not seeing anything, that's a big, that's a big kick in the pants, but it isn't going to help anything just sitting there, just, having a pity party about it.
Yeah.
And you're even going to have a bigger pity party when you're driving back home and you're like, man, I'm such a pansy. Why did I do this? And I can say that because I've done it. I've come off the mountain early, and you feel like I want to say some other words, but you don't feel very positive about yourself or your self-image. So
I feel like a big old pussy coming off the mountain, nerdy, right?
Yeah. I'm glad you said it. So
yeah, you can say whatever on this show, man.
10-4. But yeah, you don't feel good about it, and I know that's the worst feeling in the world is having to look in the mirror and face what you've done. And there's this guy I heard talking one time. He was saying he went to this bar and they wrote on the wall, I can't remember exactly what it is, like the meaning of life. Like, what's the meaning of life? And, you could write whatever you wanted on there, but you had to, draw an arrow from that one to another one. Right. And so he said the one, like the one meaning of life that was the most, had the arrows pointing to it, was self-respect. That was the most. You think about it, it's like, say you do something wrong, and then you're like, oh man, I'm a horrible person. Well, you have, your self-respect's not there. It's like, all right, you go out, you have this hunt, say you don't see an elk for 10 days, but you put every blood, sweat, tears, you put your ass on the line, you had some missed shots, or maybe you didn't see nothing, but you never came off the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's a win right there, even though you didn't get the elk. But man, how many people can say they've done that?
Yeah.
You know, so it's like it's finding them little victories and having that biggest self-respect for yourself. You know, like, are you going to respect yourself if you come off the mountain early? You know,
Yeah.
you can justify until you're blue in the face, but I think it all comes down to self-respect, man. And if you can't, if you're going to let yourself down, you know, you're going to let other people down too. So like, you got to
Yeah,
keep them
man.
promises to yourself. And so, you know, you only get, like, for me, I don't, with my job, I only get so much allocated vacation time. So I try to make as much of it count. And even if I have to be a weekend warrior, but, you know, and I think another thing too is just learn how to fail hard. I know I'm kind of going on a ramble, but fail faster,
Hmm.
you know, because
That's
I've
a
always
great point.
I've never, you know, I've never had an elk come to me if I'm just waiting on them. I always had to seem to go to them. And so if I default aggressive and I go into that, you know, that situation and I blow that elk out, or, you know, a cow sees me or something, well, I just learned something there. I didn't, if I would have sat back in the trees for 4 hours and not make a move, I didn't really learn anything. Like, I
Yeah.
just sat there, heard elk talk, you know, I should have brought a camera, you know, and I,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, there was some audio equipment, try to sell some sounds, but I just think, guys, go out there and fail as fast as you can, because you'll learn quicker. You know, like, listen to your podcast, Jim. There's a lot of good stuff, and there's certain episodes that I've listened to 2 or 3 times, and I've learned something different every time, that something I didn't pick up before. And
Sure.
it's like,
Yeah.
man, this that just saved me another 5 years of heartache. Thank you. Like,
I know.
you can always keep learning and be that student of the game, and just, you know, man,
You
we're
really,
out there because we love it.
yeah. Yeah. I think man, you're like a philosophical cowboy. I like it. I like the conversation, because I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of it does come down to self-respect, you know, and just staying, you know, I have two things that always keep me going on the mountain, and I don't care if it's an elk hunt or a bear hunt or what. Heck, fly fishing. The two things that always keep me going is one, experience has taught me that the most demotivating, dreadful, quietest elk hunt can turn on a dime at any minute.
Yep.
That's a huge one for me. It's like, okay, haven't heard a bugle for a week. Like, I've literally gone a week or two without hearing a bugle or seeing an elk or whatever. But I know that can change on a dime. You walk over one little ridge and all of a sudden your world changes completely upside down. So there's that. And the second one is kind of something that you alluded to, is I have a big fear of regret. And I do not, when September 30 hits, I do not want to go into October knowing that I have an entire year to mope around and pout about my failure to push harder. You know what I mean? And like that regret, I hate that regret. It keeps me up at night. And I've come out of a few seasons where I was just like so full of regret that, you know, oh man, I shouldn't have whined about getting a blister on my foot and called it a day that one day. And you know, maybe I should have put more time in, or I felt like I was burned out. But you won't be burned out when you get into mid-October and your season's over and you don't have anything to show for it. If you quit early, you know, if like you said, Devan, if you busted your ass the whole season and you came out empty-handed, that's hunting. You know, that nothing, no podcast on the planet's gonna, you know, guarantee you a success every season or anything like that. You know, it's just that there is still the odds of it is a hunt, and you may not fill a tag, and that's okay as long as you try, because it's the times that when I've walked out of a season and that dread that now there is 11 months before I can prove to myself that I'm not a big giant pussy, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, and
you know,
man, that's a long time.
yeah, man, when you get bucked off, you get back on. And man, I really struggle with the word try, you know, because either you do or you don't. You know, if
Yeah.
you spent 10 days out there and you put it in, you did that. You didn't try to do that. You did it.
Yep.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? It's usually the guy that comes back to the trailhead and on day two, he's like, man, I tried to go up there. I couldn't do it. You know?
Hmm.
um, but, you know, like, to go back to that guy's point, he's like, man, if I haven't heard a bugle, how do I stay motivated? man, another thing too is you could change your tactic. If you're just going off listening for bugles, it might be early September. You might have to see, and depending on the terrain, if it's more open country, you might have to get to a ridge and see if you can spot them and hunt them like a mule deer. Like, just because one tactic isn't working, try another one. Just different ways to skin the cat.
Yep. Sit a wallow, spot and stock. Glass, trail. Sit a trail. I like what you said earlier about sitting a trail. There are a lot of different ways to go about it, and so cool, man. We need to do this again. We just scratched the surface, but
man, you need to get a trad bow in your hands.
I'm gonna hit you up, dude, because I'm gonna let me overcome the challenge of switching to left-handed, and this lefty bow thing is it's harder than I thought it was gonna be, but it's surprisingly improving faster than I thought it would be. You know what I mean? I spent 2 hours out there today shooting it, and from my first shot to my last shot is like a world of difference.
Oh man, you crush it.
It'll be cool.
Heck yeah.
It'll be fun. Let's plan to get together again post-season, and I want to hear like a rundown of your season. And I know you've got I saw you posted you had pretty good tag. Was that a bighorn tag you got, or
like this year I just got some general tags. I actually have a baby coming in October, so I got to make sure
congrats, man.
Thanks. Yeah, so my beautiful wife's going to be 36 weeks pregnant when I'm up on the mountain for a week. So, it's a whole nother thing of staying on the mountain, and
yeah, man.
So I'll be checking for service and all that good stuff. But last year I drew a moose tag and I ended up got that with my trad bow. So that was
sweet.
The one. Yeah, that's a whole nother story for probably a whole nother podcast.
Well, isn't that what didn't you write about that in the Eastman's Hunting Journal, the magazine coming out? Or is that
I wrote about my elk last year.
Oh, did you? Okay, cool.
Yep. And it was pretty much the story I told you about where I snuck down the trail and got over there and shot him when my hand slipped off the grip.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Well, everybody can look for that article coming out. It's probably coming out. I think the next Eastman's magazine is next month. I don't remember. I don't know. I think I just got one, so it has to be next month. But yeah, that's pretty fantastic, man. Tell everybody where they can find you.
No, you can just find me just on Instagram. I don't post a whole lot. Just Devan Reilly at DevanReilly.
Cool. And that'll be in the show notes, guys. A couple things for you guys to keep in mind. I know, let's see, what is today? Like the 10th or the 11th, or shoot, it might be later.
I think it's the 13th.
Might be the 13th. Yeah, I can't find it's the 13th. Anyway, 13th of August, I know with the exception of you weirdos down in Utah who have some random season opening on like the 15th, the rest of us have to wait till the end of the month and season opens up. So make sure you guys are checking out, jumping onto like eastmans.com and have a look at the Tag Hub and have a look at the Elk Collective. Those two resources can really help you out. There's so many resources out there, and there's so many good dudes like Devan that are really willing to come on this show and share their experience. And I get personally, and I don't know if I get more because I'm the host or less because I'm the host out of it than you guys do, but I learned something from everybody, and I'm really excited about this season and just soaking up all this knowledge and learning from people like Devan. And Devan, I hope you have a kick-ass season, man, and congrats on the kiddo. Do you have like an in-reach when you're out camped for your wife being that far along?
Yeah, I got an in-reach, and I'm only about an hour and a half from where I'll be hunting. So
not bad at all.
I'll be pretty close. So if baby's coming, I might have to. I'm definitely going to see him the birth of my child. So I'll have to make another game plan for hunting. But I don't want to miss that. But
yeah, don't miss that, man. Is this your first?
It is.
Oh, yep. Sweet. Congrats. I'm going to send you like a box of diapers or something, man. That's awesome. I'm excited for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool, man. We'll stick on the line for just a minute, but I appreciate you joining me on the show. Everybody, his Instagram will be in the show notes. Look for his article in Eastman's Magazine coming out here probably next month. I'm sorry, I don't have a date on that. His rodeo podcast is called Blazing Trails, and his coyote hunting podcast is called Top Dog Hunt. Check those out for sure. And I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks again, Devan. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was an honor, Jim. Thanks.
You made it. That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you're following us on Instagram at The Western Huntsman and write us a good review at Apple Podcasts. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Stay Western, and I'll see you